Hi, welcome to my poster presentation on my thesis, Effects of Equivalence-Based Instruction on the Class Formation of Planets in the Solar System under the advisement of Dr. Jennifer Beers. As seen in research, children with ASD do not perform as well academically compared to their typically developing peers. They also have lower graduation rates and higher dropout rates. It's clear that children with ASD need effective teaching methods to help them catch up with their peers and support their academic performance. Equivalence-based instruction, or EBI, developed within the field of applied behavior analysis, is a great candidate for one such teaching method, since it has been found effective in teaching a variety of academic skills and topics. EBI is a procedure that trains a person to form relations between a small number of stimuli and then tests for the emergence of untrained relations between those stimuli. It is a time-efficient method of instruction, since a large amount of material can be learned by directly training only a small amount of material. Through EBI, stimulus equivalence classes are formed. The goal of EBI is for learners to establish stimulus equivalence between the stimuli. It is defined as the emergence of accurate responding to untrained and non-reinforced stimulus-stimulus relations following the reinforcement of responses to some stimulus-stimulus relations. Three properties must be demonstrated by the learner: reflexivity, symmetry, and transitivity. Reflexivity occurs when the learner selects a stimulus that is identical to the sample stimulus without direct training or reinforcement. After a learner is directly trained to form a relation between two stimuli, symmetry occurs when the bidirectional relation emerges without further training or reinforcement. For example, when a learner is trained to select the written word when presented with a picture of it. Symmetry is demonstrated when the learner selects the picture when presented with the written word for it without further training. After a learner is directly trained on two different relations between stimuli that have one stimulus in common, transitivity occurs when a relation emerges between the stimuli that have not been previously paired without further training or reinforcement. For example, the learner is directly trained to select a word when presented with a picture, and then trained to vocalize the word when presented with the written word, and then demonstrates without training that they can vocalize the word when presented with the picture. One way to train relations is through match-to-sample or MTS training. In an MTS trial, the learner is presented with a sample stimulus and is required to emit an observing response by interacting with the sample stimulus. Then two or more stimuli, referred to as comparison stimuli, are presented in an array. The learner is then required to select one. For each sample stimulus, the positive comparison stimulus, upon being selected, leads to the delivery of reinforcement. The negative comparisons, upon being selected, do not lead to the delivery of reinforcement. In addition to studying the formation of equivalence classes, research has been conducted to investigate the transfer function between stimuli in an equivalence class. This occurs when a stimulus is a member of a stimulus equivalence class and acquires the function of another member in the class. Though I have not finished the IRB process, participants are planned to be recruited via word of mouth in the form of recruitment flyers and emails to be sent through my network of contacts within the ABA field, both academic and professional. The participants to be included in this study will be taught how to respond to the trials on a PowerPoint in pre-training. Within the study, the participant will be trained to form relations between members of stimulus classes relating to planets in the solar system. The stimulus classes are represented by letters and will be made up of A, dictated planet names, B, written planet names, C, planet pictures, D, ordinal number of planets, and E, planet name spoken by the participant. The study will begin with a pretest for all relations. Then an initial transfer function probe will be conducted where the participant will be asked to place the planet pictures in order. In this study, three relations will be directly trained using MTS training on a PowerPoint. The AB, AC, and AD relations, particularly, will be trained. The participant will be trained to select the written name of the planet, the picture of the planet, and the ordinal number corresponding to the order of the planet with respect to its distance from the sun when presented with the dictated planet name. In other words, they will click on the speaker on the top, hear a planet name being spoken, and then they will make their selection. In between each training phase, probes will be conducted to check if the symmetrical relations have emerged. Then, when training is complete, All relations will be tested for emergence in a post-test. Finally, the final transfer function probe will be conducted. Based on previous research, it is hypothesized that all participants will demonstrate the emergence of untrained relations in the probes and post-tests, and transfer function will be observed during the final transfer function probe. Previously learned discriminative function of the ordinal number stimulus class could transfer to the planet picture stimulus class. If these hypothetical results are observed, the expected findings would contribute to the current body of literature investigating the effectiveness of EBI on teaching academic topics to children with ASD. Additionally, EBI could be found effective for establishing the specific academic skill of identifying and ordering planets in the solar system. Not only that, but the demonstration of transfer function during the final transfer function probe would also indicate that EBI could be useful beyond merely establishing equivalent relations. In this case, the previously learned discriminative function of the ordinal number stimulus class could transfer to the planet picture stimulus class. This has significant implications for the incorporation of EBI in teaching academic topics to children with ASD. School curricula could be designed to take advantage of the transfer function between members of an equivalence class. While the results are expected to be positive, there are some limitations that should be noted. A limitation of the study may be that the number of PowerPoints required for teaching the baseline relations and the complexity of the phases could make the delivery of this intervention difficult for a teacher in a classroom with many students, affecting social validity. However, if the intervention was done automatically with a computer program, then the teacher would not need to deliver the intervention to each student individually. Another possible limitation involves the format of the transfer function probes. While testing for transfer function, the ordering format may not resemble a task typically seen in academic settings. In a classroom, students may be asked to write the planet names in order on a worksheet rather than arrange their pictures. It is unclear whether the participants in this study would be able to do so, since a writing repertoire is not a prerequisite. To simulate a more natural environment, future studies could create a task to test for transfer function using a paper and pencil worksheet, as typically seen in classrooms. And that is all for my presentation. Thank you for checking it out.